Welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to talk about how you can learn English at home every single day without needing a teacher. I'm Natasha, and I will guide you through a simple yet very effective daily routine that will help you improve your listening, speaking, and understanding of English naturally. Many learners feel that without a teacher, it's hard to make real progress, but I'm going to show you that it is completely possible. The key is consistency, small habits, and using the resources you already have at home. First, let's start with listening practice. One of the best ways to improve your listening is to expose yourself to English every day, even if it's just a few minutes. You can watch short videos, listen to podcasts, or even listen to music in English. The goal is not just to hear words, but to get used to the rhythm, the intonation, and the way native speakers naturally speak. Start with content that is interesting to you. For example, if you love cooking, watch cooking videos in English. If you like technology, follow English channels about gadgets or tech news. This makes listening practice feel fun and not like a chore. While listening, try not to focus on understanding every single word at first. Instead, focus on the main idea. What is the speaker talking about? What are the key points? If you try to translate every word in your mind, you will slow down your learning. Instead, listen actively and try to guess the meaning from context. For example, if someone says, "I decided to skip the meeting because I was exhausted," even if you don't know exhausted, you can guess from the rest of the sentence that it means very tired. Next, let's talk about repeating and shadowing. Shadowing is a technique where you listen to a sentence or a short paragraph and try to repeat it exactly as the speaker says. Focus on pronunciation, intonation, and stress. This is an advanced technique, but it works amazingly well to improve both listening and speaking skills. Even if you don't get it perfect at first, just try to imitate the sounds as closely as possible. Over time, your brain will naturally adjust and you will start thinking in English more fluently. Another tip for your home practice is to use subtitles wisely. You can start with English subtitles while watching videos to connect spoken words with written words. Once you feel more confident, try watching the same video without subtitles. This will train your ears to understand English without depending on reading. The goal is to gradually wean yourself off subtitles so you can rely purely on listening. Now let's include a daily routine that is realistic and easy to follow. You don't need to spend hours every day. Start with just 15 to 20 minutes of focused listening. Then spend another 10 minutes repeating sentences or shadowing. If you like, you can spend another 10 minutes reading something in English aloud. The combination of listening, repeating, and reading aloud will reinforce your learning in a way that passive listening alone cannot. Another important part of home learning is keeping a notebook or digital journal. Whenever you hear a new word, phrase, or sentence that feels useful, write it down. Try to make your own example sentences using these words. This active practice will help you remember vocabulary longer and use it naturally in conversation. Writing also strengthens your understanding of grammar and sentence structure. You can also use your daily routine to practice thinking in English. For example, when you are making breakfast, describe your actions in English silently or out loud. Say, "I am boiling water. I am making tea. I need to slice the bread." This helps your brain form English patterns naturally. Over time, you will notice that thinking in English becomes easier and faster, and speaking will feel more spontaneous. Technology can be a powerful ally in your home practice. Use apps that are designed for advanced learners, like vocabulary apps, listening exercises, or English news apps. You can set notifications to remind yourself to practice every day. But be careful not to just scroll passively. Make sure each practice session is focused and intentional. Even short focused sessions are more effective than long, distracted ones. Another fun method is to narrate your day in English. Before going to bed, try to describe your day in your own words. For example, "Today I worked on my project. I had a meeting with my team. I went for a walk in the evening. The weather was lovely." This helps with recalling vocabulary, using correct grammar, and speaking fluently. Doing this daily builds your confidence and makes English a natural part of your life. Listening to English podcasts specifically designed for advanced learners is also very effective. Choose podcasts with topics you enjoy, whether it's science, history, culture, or personal development. Listen once for the main idea, then a second time to focus on new vocabulary or phrases. You can even pause and repeat sentences to improve comprehension and pronunciation. Finally, one of the most important aspects of learning English at home is consistency. Even if you spend just 15 minutes every day, daily exposure is much more effective than doing one long session once a week. Make it part of your routine, like brushing your teeth or making coffee. English should become a natural part of your day, not a chore or a task. Remember, the goal is progress, not perfection. Don't worry if you don't understand everything at first. Keep listening, repeating, and practicing. Over time, your listening skills will improve, your speaking will become more fluent, and your confidence in using English will grow. Learning English at home is entirely possible if you follow a structured daily practice routine. By following this routine, you can create a strong foundation for your English learning without needing a teacher. You have all the tools you need: videos, podcasts, apps, books, and your own motivation. Combine listening, shadowing, writing, and thinking in English daily, and you will notice significant improvements. The key is to make it enjoyable, stay consistent, and actively engage with the language every single day. Another very powerful technique for learning English at home is focusing on different accents. English is spoken in many ways around the world, and being able to understand various accents is crucial for advanced listening. For example, listening to British English, American English, Australian English, or Indian English will expose you to different pronunciations, rhythm, and slang. A simple way to practice is to choose one short video or podcast each day in a different accent. Listen carefully to how words are pronounced, the intonation used in questions, statements, or expressions of emotion. Over time, your brain will start recognizing patterns and you will feel more confident understanding speakers from different countries. To make accent practice even more effective, try repeating phrases exactly as the speaker says, focusing on the same sounds and rhythm. This not only improves your listening, but also improves your own pronunciation, making your speech sound more natural. Don't be afraid to exaggerate the sounds at first. It helps your mouth get used to new movements. For example, in British English, the R at the end of words is often softer or silent, while in American English it is pronounced strongly. Practicing these differences aloud helps you internalize them. You can also practice listening actively by predicting what comes next in a conversation or speech. This technique is called active anticipation. When you listen to a podcast or a conversation, pause for a moment and think about what the speaker might say next. This trains your brain to process English faster and improves comprehension in real-time conversations. For example, if someone says, "I missed the bus this morning," so you might anticipate they will say something like, "I was late for work," or "I had to wait for the next one," even if your guess is not exact. This exercise makes your listening much sharper. Another advanced technique is listening for linking words and connectors in English. Native speakers often connect words together, making them sound like one continuous word. For instance, in the sentence, "I'm going to the store," it can sound like "I'm gonna the store." Recognizing these patterns helps you understand fast, natural speech. You can practice by listening to short sentences and trying to write down exactly what you hear. Compare it with the transcript or subtitles to see what you missed. This exercise is challenging at first, but it trains your ear to catch natural English speech. In addition to listening, reading in English at home is an excellent way to support your learning. Choose materials that match your level, but also introduce some new vocabulary. For advanced learners, articles, short stories, and blogs are perfect. While reading, try reading aloud. This combines listening and speaking practice because you hear yourself while pronouncing words. Reading aloud also strengthens your understanding of sentence rhythm, punctuation, and stress patterns. It is one of the most effective techniques to develop natural speech patterns. To add variety to your daily routine, you can also engage with English in interactive ways. For example, narrate a story to yourself or describe an imaginary scene in English. If you enjoy creativity, write a short paragraph every day about something that happened, your thoughts, or an idea. Then read it aloud and try recording yourself. Listening back to your own recording allows you to notice areas for improvement, like pronunciation, pacing, or word choice. This self-feedback is extremely valuable because it helps you become aware of subtle mistakes. In addition to dictation, shadowing complex dialogues is excellent for improving real-life comprehension. Take dialogues from movies, podcasts, or interviews, and try to repeat them immediately after the speaker. Focus on rhythm, speed, and emotion. For example, if someone is angry, excited, or surprised, try to convey the same emotion in your repetition. This technique not only improves listening but also prepares you for natural, emotional conversations in English. Advanced learners can also benefit from translating thoughts into English in real time. For example, when you are reading the news in your native language, try summarizing it aloud in English. You don't need perfect grammar at first. The goal is to think and speak quickly in English. This bridges the gap between comprehension and expression, making speaking faster and more natural. Over time, this exercise will help you think directly in English without mentally translating. Another effective practice is to use English subtitles creatively. Watch a short video first without subtitles, then watch again with English subtitles to catch anything you missed. Pay attention to expressions, idioms, and sentence structure. Then, try repeating sentences aloud exactly as they are spoken. This combination of listening, reading, and speaking reinforces vocabulary, comprehension, and pronunciation simultaneously. For higher-level comprehension, listen to academic talks, interviews, or discussions with multiple speakers. Pay attention to how speakers take turns, respond to each other, and use linking phrases. Understanding natural conversation flow in discussions is critical for advanced listening. Afterward, summarize the discussion aloud, noting key points, arguments, and opinions. This improves listening comprehension, note-taking skills, and the ability to express ideas clearly in English. Engaging in reflective listening is another advanced technique. After listening to a clip, ask yourself, what did I find most interesting? Did I agree or disagree? How would I explain this to a friend? Answering these questions aloud strengthens both critical thinking and expressive English skills. It also trains you to engage with English actively rather than passively. Another powerful technique is shadowing with pauses. Listen to a sentence or two, pause, and then repeat what you heard. Focus on exact pronunciation, stress, and intonation. This technique is especially effective when practicing long or complex sentences. It teaches your brain to process English quickly and accurately while maintaining natural rhythm. For vocabulary expansion, make a habit of noting down unfamiliar words during listening exercises. Then, create your own sentences using those words and read them aloud. Practicing new vocabulary in context helps you remember it and prepares you to use it naturally in speaking or writing. You can also categorize new words into themes or topics, which makes recall easier. Another advanced exercise is listening with prediction. Before a speaker finishes a sentence or paragraph, pause and predict what they might say next. For example, if someone begins, "I was nervous about the presentation because," you might predict, "I hadn't prepared enough," or "I was speaking in front of a large audience." Even if your prediction isn't exact, it trains your brain to anticipate language patterns, which is crucial for real-time comprehension. You can also practice listening to fast, authentic speech. For example, Try listening to news reports, debates, or TED Talks at their normal speed, then replay challenging sections to catch details. Pay attention to linking sounds, contractions, and subtle pronunciation differences. Gradually, you'll find that understanding rapid speech becomes easier, even without subtitles. Another effective strategy is self-recording exercises. Record yourself speaking about a topic, telling a story, or summarizing a video. Then, listen to the recording and note areas for improvement: pronunciation, rhythm, clarity, or grammar. This self-feedback loop is extremely valuable because it allows you to hear mistakes that are often unnoticed while speaking. Over time, your speech becomes more fluent and natural. You can also make learning more dynamic by combining listening with other skills. For example, listen to a podcast and simultaneously take notes in English. Then summarize the key points aloud. This integrates listening, writing, and speaking skills, reinforcing your learning. The act of writing while listening also improves focus and comprehension. Another strategy is practicing comprehension under real-life conditions. For example, listen to English while walking, cooking, or doing chores. Even if your attention is partially divided, your brain absorbs language patterns, intonation, and vocabulary subconsciously. This type of passive yet structured exposure improves your overall listening ability and trains your brain to understand English in different contexts. For advanced learners, it is also useful to practice with authentic interviews or conversations. Focus on how native speakers express opinions, agree, disagree, or emphasize points. Take note of phrasal verbs, idioms, and sentence connectors. Later, practice using them in your own sentences aloud. This enhances both comprehension and natural expression in conversation. Another excellent habit is to engage with English content repeatedly. Listen to the same podcast episode or watch the same video multiple times over a week. Each time, focus on different aspects. First for the main idea, second for vocabulary, third for pronunciation, and fourth for intonation and emotion. Repetition helps solidify comprehension, memory, and pronunciation, making advanced listening much easier over time. One of the most effective ways to improve advanced English listening is to immerse yourself in authentic English content daily. This includes news reports, interviews, podcasts, documentaries, and lectures. When you listen, try to avoid pausing to translate everything into your native language. Instead, focus on understanding the meaning from context. For example, if you hear a phrase like, "The government announced new regulations to tackle climate change," even if you don't know every word, you can understand the main idea. The government is taking action about the environment. Gradually, your brain will start processing English directly without mental translation, which is essential for advanced learners. In addition to passive listening, you should practice active listening every day. Active listening means paying full attention to the speaker, analyzing the structure of sentences, and noticing how ideas are connected. One exercise is to listen to a short news segment, then write a summary of what you understood in English. Try to capture key points, arguments, and any opinions expressed. Afterward, compare your summary with the transcript or original content. This helps identify gaps in comprehension and trains you to notice details that are easy to miss in fast speech. A key part of advanced listening practice is understanding different levels of meaning. English speakers often imply more than they say. For example, if someone says, "I guess we'll see what happens," they may be expressing uncertainty or doubt. Understanding implied meaning, tone, and emotion requires careful attention and repeated exposure to authentic English. One useful technique is to pause a podcast or video and ask yourself, what is the speaker really trying to say here? Answering in English aloud strengthens both listening comprehension and critical thinking in the language. Another highly effective strategy is to practice summarizing and paraphrasing. After listening to a short story, interview, or lecture, explain it in your own words aloud. Try to use different vocabulary or sentence structures from the original speaker. For example, if the speaker says, "The project was delayed due to unforeseen circumstances," you might say, "They couldn't finish the project on time because of unexpected problems." Paraphrasing develops your ability to process English deeply and express ideas naturally, which is crucial for advanced learners. You can also integrate dictation exercises into your daily routine. Listen to a short audio clip, pause, and write down exactly what you hear. Focus on punctuation, contractions, and word endings. Afterward, check your transcription against the original. This technique trains your ear to notice subtle pronunciation differences and improves listening precision. Over time, dictation also strengthens your spelling, grammar awareness, and ability to catch fast speech. Another powerful method is shadowing with emotional expression. Choose a dialogue, podcast, or video clip and repeat exactly what you hear while matching the speaker's emotion and intonation. For example, if the speaker is excited, angry, or frustrated, try to reproduce the same emotion. This not only improves pronunciation and rhythm, but also trains you to understand the emotional nuance of English, which is often challenging at advanced levels. Advanced learners should also focus on phrasal verbs, idioms, and natural expressions. Native speakers use these constantly, and understanding them is essential for real comprehension. For instance, phrases like "hit the ground running," "call it a day," or "cut corners" appear frequently in conversation. One effective strategy is to note down new expressions during listening, then create your own sentences using them. Say these sentences aloud multiple times to reinforce memory and pronunciation. This habit makes your English sound more natural and fluent. Another effective practice is listening with prediction. While listening to a video or podcast, pause briefly and try to guess what the speaker will say next. This trains your brain to anticipate language patterns and increases comprehension speed. For example, if someone starts with, "I didn't expect the results to be so," you might predict positive or negative based on context. Even if your guess is not exact, this exercise sharpens your listening skills and makes real-time understanding much easier. You can also practice listening to fast or natural speech with comprehension exercises. Start with a short clip at normal speed, then slow it down and repeat sentences aloud. Pay attention to linking words, contractions, and stress patterns. Then gradually return to the original speed and try to follow along. This technique builds your ability to process English quickly, which is necessary for advanced listening, especially in real-life conversations or media. Another important strategy is to listen to content on unfamiliar topics. Advanced learners often plateau because they stick to familiar subjects. Expose yourself to new areas like science, economics, politics, or culture. This not only expands your vocabulary, but also trains your brain to understand diverse sentence structures and specialized terminology. When encountering new words, try to infer meaning from context first, then confirm by checking a dictionary or online source. This method strengthens advanced comprehension skills and prepares you for complex listening situations. Immersive learning also involves combining multiple skills at once. For example, listen to a TED Talk, take notes in English, then summarize it aloud. Then, write a short reflection or opinion piece about it. This integrates listening, speaking, writing, and critical thinking. Doing such integrated exercises daily accelerates progress and builds confidence for academic or professional use of English. For advanced learners, it's also helpful to focus on the natural flow of conversation. Listen to interviews or debates and notice how speakers take turns, interrupt politely, or use linking words. Phrases like, "as I was saying," "on the other hand," or "to be honest," are common in native speech. Practicing these expressions aloud helps you sound more fluent and makes listening easier because you begin to anticipate conversational patterns. Another useful method is self-recording and self-analysis. Record yourself summarizing a video, narrating a story, or explaining a topic. Then, listen to your recording critically. Note pronunciation errors, pacing, intonation, and word choice. Repeat the exercise multiple times, focusing on improvement each time. This technique develops both listening and speaking skills and builds awareness of subtle mistakes that you might not notice while speaking. You can also practice listening with background noise to simulate real-life situations. For instance, listen to a podcast while walking in a busy area, cooking, or doing chores. Although your attention may be divided, your brain still processes the speech. Over time, you become accustomed to understanding English in imperfect listening environments, which is essential for real-world communication. Another effective method is storytelling practice. Listen to a short story or narrative, then try to retell it aloud in your own words. Include details, emotions, and expressions. This exercise improves comprehension, vocabulary recall, and natural speaking flow. Doing it regularly also enhances memory retention because you are actively engaging with the material. You should also make it a habit to learn and practice expressions that show nuance, such as agreeing, disagreeing, suggesting, or clarifying. Phrases like, "I see your point, but could you clarify that?" or "that makes sense" are very common in conversations. Practice using these expressions aloud after listening exercises. This helps your English sound more natural and enables you to participate confidently in discussions. Another advanced listening technique is listening for patterns and repetition. Native speakers often repeat key words or ideas to emphasize points. While listening, note these repetitions and see how they connect ideas. Recognizing patterns helps you follow long, complex explanations more easily and improves comprehension of formal or academic English. You can also practice paraphrasing immediately after listening. After a short segment, explain the same idea in different words aloud. This reinforces vocabulary, sentence structures, and comprehension. Over time, you will be able to understand and explain complex information naturally in English. Another excellent method is using podcasts with transcripts. Listen first without reading, then read the transcript to catch anything you missed. Highlight new vocabulary, expressions, and idioms. Repeat sentences aloud to reinforce pronunciation and comprehension. This combination of listening, reading, and speaking creates a strong, well-rounded practice routine. Finally, advanced learners should challenge themselves with interactive exercises, such as answering questions about podcasts, debates, or interviews in English. For example, after listening, ask yourself, what was the main argument? What examples did the speaker give? How would I explain this to someone else? Answer aloud in full sentences. This strengthens comprehension, critical thinking, and speaking fluency simultaneously. Another extremely effective method for learning English at home is to practice immersive thinking exercises. This means training your brain to think directly in English instead of translating from your native language. For example, while doing daily tasks like cooking, cleaning, or walking, try describing everything in English silently or aloud. Say things like, "I am boiling water for tea. I need to chop vegetables. The sun is shining brightly today." This habit may feel awkward at first, but over time it trains your brain to form English thoughts naturally, which is essential for fluency. To take immersive thinking a step further, you can practice mental conversations. Imagine speaking with a friend or colleague about a topic in English. For instance, think about what you would say if someone asked, "What do you think about climate change?" Formulate your response mentally and then say it aloud. Try to include new vocabulary or idiomatic expressions you recently learned. This exercise strengthens your ability to speak spontaneously and improves listening comprehension because you start predicting possible responses in English conversations. Another highly effective technique is timed listening practice. Set a timer for a short period, like 5 or 10 minutes, and listen to a podcast, news segment, or audio clip without pausing. Try to understand as much as possible in real time. After the timer ends, write or summarize what you heard aloud. This practice simulates real-life situations where you have to follow English at normal speed without relying on repetition or subtitles. Over time, your ability to process fast speech improves significantly. Advanced learners can also benefit from creating personalized self-assessments. After each listening session, ask yourself questions like, how much did I understand? Which words or phrases did I miss? Was I able to follow the speaker's main idea? Keep a journal of your answers and track progress over time. This self-monitoring helps you identify weak areas and focus your practice on the skills that need improvement, making your learning more efficient and goal-oriented. In addition to listening, focus on pronunciation drills. Advanced learners often struggle with subtle differences in sounds, stress, and intonation. Choose a list of challenging words, phrases, or sentences from your listening exercises and repeat them multiple times aloud. Pay attention to syllable stress, vowel sounds, and sentence rhythm. Over time, this not only improves speaking, but also sharpens listening, because your brain becomes more attuned to the subtle sounds of English. Another powerful method is to combine listening with note-taking and summarization. Listen to a short lecture, podcast, or interview, and jot down key points, vocabulary, and examples in English. Afterward, summarize the content aloud in your own words. This technique integrates listening, writing, and speaking skills, reinforces memory, and improves your ability to process information quickly in English. Doing this daily builds advanced comprehension skills and fluency. To enhance comprehension further, practice listening to English with varying speeds. Start with normal speed, then listen to a faster version of the same content. This trains your ear to follow rapid speech while improving concentration. Afterward, slow the audio down and repeat difficult sentences aloud, focusing on pronunciation, intonation, and stress patterns. Alternating between fast and slow listening strengthens both understanding and speaking ability, preparing you for real-world conversations where speech is often faster than classroom English. Another effective exercise is to engage with multiple speakers at once. Listen to debates, panel discussions, or interviews with more than one person speaking. Notice how speakers respond, agree, or disagree, and how they organize their ideas. Focus on transitions like "on the other hand," "in my opinion," or "to clarify." Practicing this type of listening trains your brain to follow complex conversations and prepares you for real-life situations where multiple speakers interact naturally. Advanced learners should also practice thinking critically while listening. For example, when listening to a news story, ask yourself, what is the main point? Do I agree or disagree? What evidence supports the argument? Then explain your thoughts aloud in English. This exercise strengthens comprehension, reasoning, and speaking skills simultaneously. Over time, you develop the ability to listen actively, analyze information, and express opinions clearly in English. Another useful technique is interactive storytelling. Listen to a short story or narrative, then retell it aloud, adding your own details or variations. Focus on using correct grammar, vocabulary, and natural intonation. Try to make the story sound engaging, as if speaking to a friend. This exercise improves comprehension, speaking fluency, and vocabulary recall, while also training you to convey ideas clearly and naturally. For vocabulary development, advanced learners should practice learning words in context. While listening, note down unfamiliar words or phrases, then write sentences or short paragraphs using them. Read these sentences aloud multiple times to reinforce pronunciation and memory. This method helps move vocabulary from passive recognition to active use, which is essential for advanced English fluency. Another effective method is listening with selective attention. Instead of trying to understand every single word, focus on keywords, phrases, and main ideas. For example, when listening to a lecture, identify the topic, supporting points, and conclusions. This approach trains your brain to prioritize important information and improves comprehension in real-life situations, where you often hear English with background noise or accents. Shadowing remains one of the most powerful techniques for advanced learners. Listen to a sentence, pause, and immediately repeat it aloud. Focus not just on pronunciation, but also on rhythm, stress, and intonation. For longer content, like interviews or discussions, break it into short sections and repeat each section multiple times. This technique integrates listening and speaking, helping you internalize natural speech patterns and improving your ability to respond quickly in conversations. Another strategy is listening with the goal of summarizing opinions and arguments. For example, after listening to a debate or panel discussion, identify each speaker's main point and summarize it aloud. Pay attention to how ideas are supported with examples, evidence, or reasoning. This exercise improves comprehension of complex English and trains your brain to process and convey information logically and clearly. Advanced learners can also use shadowing combined with note-taking. Listen to a short segment. Pause, write down keywords, then repeat the segment aloud while referring to your notes. This multi-step exercise reinforces memory, comprehension, and speaking skills simultaneously. Over time, your ability to recall and express information in English becomes much stronger. Another effective technique is listening to English while performing routine tasks. For example, listen to a podcast or audiobook while exercising, cooking, or commuting. Even if your focus is partially divided, your brain absorbs language patterns, vocabulary, and pronunciation. This type of passive yet structured listening strengthens advanced comprehension and helps you adapt to real-life situations where English is spoken naturally and quickly. To improve listening under real-life conditions, practice with authentic materials that include background noise, multiple speakers, or fast speech. For example, watch a news clip from a busy newsroom, listen to street interviews, or watch a live discussion. Initially, you may not catch everything, but repeated exposure trains your ear to focus on key information and interpret natural speech accurately. Another advanced method is to engage in reflective listening. After listening to a podcast or video, ask yourself questions like, what surprised me? What do I agree or disagree with? How would I explain this to someone else? Answer in full sentences aloud. This combines listening, critical thinking, and speaking practice, which are essential for high-level fluency. Interactive comprehension exercises are also very useful. Listen to a discussion, pause, and ask yourself questions about details, opinions, and vocabulary. Then answer aloud in English. For example, what was the main idea? How did the speaker feel about it? Which words or phrases were new to me? Answering these questions actively reinforces comprehension, memory, and natural English expression. Advanced learners should also practice listening and speaking simultaneously. For example, listen to a TED Talk or interview, then pause and explain the ideas aloud in your own words. Try to include new vocabulary and idiomatic expressions. Repeating this daily strengthens comprehension, vocabulary retention, and speaking fluency. Another effective technique is to practice listening for tone and emotion. Native speakers often convey meaning not just with words, but with intonation, stress, and emotion. Pay attention to whether speakers sound excited, frustrated, uncertain, or sarcastic. Try repeating sentences with the same emotion. This improves both listening and speaking, as you learn to interpret and convey subtleties naturally. You can also create personalized listening challenges. Pick a topic, find a related podcast or video, and listen without subtitles. Write or summarize what you understood, then compare with the transcript. Focus on missed words, phrases, or structures, and repeat difficult sentences aloud. Regularly practicing in this structured way strengthens advanced comprehension and speaking confidence. Finally, one of the most effective advanced strategies is combining multiple skills into a single daily routine. For example, start by listening to a short podcast or TED Talk. Take notes in English, highlighting key points and new vocabulary. Summarize the content aloud, including your own thoughts. Shadow difficult sentences, focusing on pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. Create a few original sentences using new vocabulary. Reflect on the speaker's opinion or argument and express agreement or disagreement aloud. Doing this integrated practice daily trains your brain to process English holistically. You develop listening comprehension, vocabulary, pronunciation, speaking fluency, critical thinking, and the ability to express ideas naturally. Over time, these habits build advanced listening and speaking skills that make English feel like a natural part of your life. One highly effective technique for advanced learners is focusing on subtle pronunciation patterns and connected speech. Native speakers rarely pronounce words in isolation. Instead, words are often linked together, creating a continuous flow. For example, I'm going to often sounds like I'm gonna, and what do you want to do can sound like what you want to do. By practicing these patterns aloud, you train both your ear and mouth to recognize and produce natural speech. You can take short sentences from podcasts or videos and repeat them multiple times, paying close attention to rhythm, stress, and linking sounds. Over time, this helps your brain process fast, natural English more easily. Another very useful method is listening for implied meaning and nuance. Advanced English isn't just about understanding words, it's about interpreting tone, intention, and emotion. For example, if someone says, "I guess that's fine," the actual meaning may be reluctant agreement rather than enthusiasm. To practice, listen to a short dialogue or interview and ask yourself, what is the speaker really trying to say? What is their attitude? Then try repeating the line aloud with the same emotion. This builds your ability to detect subtle meaning in conversations, which is essential for advanced listening comprehension. Advanced learners should also practice with humor and sarcasm. Jokes, puns, and sarcastic remarks are often tricky because they rely on context and tone. Watch stand-up comedy clips or humorous podcasts and try to understand why something is funny. Pause after a joke and explain aloud what the humor is based on. This exercise not only improves listening, but also sharpens cultural understanding and trains your brain to recognize context-dependent meanings. Another excellent technique is practicing shadowing with variable speed. Start by listening to a sentence at normal speed, then repeat it aloud. Next, play it faster and try to keep up. Finally, slow it down and focus on difficult sounds or linking words. This method trains your brain to process English at different speeds, making real-life fast conversations much easier to follow. For instance, in fast news segments or interviews, speech often sounds almost compressed. Regular practice with speed variation prepares you to handle these situations naturally. You can also combine listening with visualization. When listening to a story, lecture, or narrative, try to create mental images of what is happening. Picture the scene, the people, and the actions in your mind. Then explain the story aloud using your visualized details. This technique enhances comprehension, memory retention, and speaking fluency. It also helps connect abstract ideas to concrete images, which makes understanding complex topics easier. Another strategy is to practice listening with multi-step comprehension. For example, listen to a news report and first identify the main idea. Next, identify supporting details, such as examples or evidence. Finally, analyze any opinion or conclusion expressed by the speaker. Summarize everything aloud in English. This multi-layered approach strengthens your ability to follow complex arguments. Advanced learners should also practice listening for discourse markers and connectors. Words like however, therefore, on the other hand, and as a result, help speakers organize ideas and connect thoughts. Listening for these words allows you to anticipate what comes next in a conversation or lecture. After identifying them, try repeating sentences aloud while emphasizing the connectors naturally. This improves both comprehension and speaking flow. Another very effective technique is interactive listening exercises. Listen to a short clip, pause, and ask yourself questions. What did the speaker say? How did they feel? What would I say in response? Answer aloud in complete sentences. This active engagement forces your brain to process English more deeply and helps you practice spontaneous speaking. Over time, these exercises improve both comprehension and expressive ability in advanced contexts. You can also practice advanced vocabulary in context. When listening, note unfamiliar words and phrases. Instead of memorizing them in isolation, create sentences or mini paragraphs using these words. Read them aloud multiple times. For instance, if you hear meticulous instead of just knowing the definition, create a sentence like, "She is meticulous about her work, checking every detail carefully." This active usage helps you internalize vocabulary for listening and speaking. Another advanced method is practicing summarization under time pressure. Listen to a 2 to 3 minute podcast or news segment, then summarize aloud in 1 minute without notes. This forces you to identify main ideas quickly, condense information, and express it clearly. It trains your brain to process English in real time, which is critical for professional, academic, or social conversations. Shadowing with multi-speaker content is another excellent technique. Listen to a conversation, debate, or panel discussion with multiple speakers. Repeat each speaker's lines aloud, matching their tone, rhythm, and pace. Pay attention to how speakers take turns, respond, and connect ideas. This exercise improves listening comprehension, conversational timing, and natural speech production. Advanced learners can also practice predictive listening. Before a speaker finishes a sentence, pause mentally and guess what comes next. For example, "I was worried about the exam because" might lead you to predict, "I didn't study enough," or "it seemed too difficult." Even if your prediction isn't exact, this technique enhances real-time processing and helps your brain anticipate language patterns naturally. Another powerful technique is to use authentic transcripts for detailed study. Listen to a short audio clip, then read the transcript carefully. Highlight new vocabulary, phrasal verbs, idioms, or grammar patterns. Repeat sentences aloud, paying attention to intonation and stress. This combined listening, reading, speaking practice deepens comprehension, reinforces memory, and improves fluency in advanced English. You should also practice listening while writing reflections. After a podcast, TED Talk, or lecture, write a short paragraph in English summarizing the key points and your opinion. Then read it aloud. This exercise integrates listening, writing, and speaking, reinforcing advanced comprehension, vocabulary retention, and expressive ability. It also strengthens the connection between understanding English and producing it naturally. Another very effective method is to engage with multimedia content in diverse accents. English is spoken worldwide, and accents influence pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. Listen to British, American, Australian, and other English accents. Repeat sentences aloud to mimic the accent and rhythm. Over time, your ear becomes more adaptable, and you will understand speakers from different regions more easily. Advanced learners should also focus on listening for implied attitudes or subtleties in conversation. For example, if someone says, "Well, that's one way to do it," they might imply skepticism, irony, or politeness. Pause, analyze the tone, and repeat it aloud using the same expression and intonation. Understanding subtle cues is key for real-life communication and professional settings. Another excellent technique is creating thematic listening routines. Pick a topic for the week, such as science, economics, or culture, and listen to multiple sources about it daily. Focus on vocabulary, idioms, and common expressions. Then, summarize or explain the content aloud in your own words. This deep dive approach reinforces comprehension and builds domain-specific vocabulary that is useful for academic or professional discussions. You can also integrate listening with active discussion practice. After listening to a podcast, imagine a conversation with a friend about the topic. Pose questions and answer them aloud in English. Include your thoughts, opinions, and reflections. This exercise strengthens comprehension, speaking fluency, and the ability to respond naturally in real-life conversations. Another advanced practice is timed note-taking. Listen to a short segment, take notes in English, and then summarize what you learned in a set time, like 2 minutes. Focus on main ideas, supporting details, and key vocabulary. Repeat with new content regularly. This improves listening precision, memory, and expressive skills simultaneously. Shadowing with emotion remains a critical technique for advanced learners. Focus not only on words but also on tone, pitch, and emotion. If the speaker is frustrated, excited, or hesitant, repeat the lines with the same emotional expression. This trains your brain to interpret both verbal and nonverbal cues, which is essential for understanding real-life conversations. Another useful strategy is listening to lectures or discussions on unfamiliar topics. Don't worry if you don't understand every word. Focus on main ideas, supporting points, and logical connections. Afterward, try summarizing aloud in your own words. This builds comprehension skills and prepares you for academic or professional English, where unfamiliar terminology is common. Advanced learners should also practice listening with integrated vocabulary recall. While listening, note new words, phrases, or idioms. Immediately create sentences or mini dialogues using them aloud. Repeating this habit daily helps move vocabulary from passive recognition to active usage, which is critical for advanced listening and speaking. You can also practice listening with varying background conditions. For example, play audio with slight noise like a cafe or street sound and try to understand the speech. This mimics real-life situations where English is spoken in imperfect conditions. Over time, your comprehension becomes sharper, and you can focus on key information even amidst distractions. Another effective method is listening and comparing sentence structures. After listening to a complex sentence, break it down. Subject, verb, object, clauses, connectors. Then, reconstruct the sentence aloud in your own words, keeping the meaning intact. This exercise improves understanding of advanced grammar, comprehension, and speaking accuracy. Finally, integrate multi-step listening exercises. Listen to a podcast or lecture, summarize aloud, write key points, repeat challenging sentences aloud, and discuss opinions or predictions. This holistic approach strengthens comprehension, vocabulary, pronunciation, and natural English expression simultaneously. Consistently practicing this routine at home accelerates advanced English mastery and builds confidence in both listening and speaking. Another highly effective method for advanced learners is focusing on understanding idiomatic expressions in context. Idioms are phrases whose meanings cannot be understood literally, such as kick the bucket or spill the beans. While listening to podcasts, interviews, or news reports, note any idioms you hear. Pause. Think about what they mean, and then repeat the sentences aloud, using the idioms in your own example sentences. Practicing idioms this way helps you understand native speakers more naturally and allows you to use expressions fluently in conversation. Advanced learners should also practice listening to real-life conversations in informal settings. This can include talk shows, interviews, and casual podcasts where people speak naturally, sometimes interrupting each other or using slang. Focus on how ideas are linked, the pauses they take, and how emotions are conveyed. After listening, try to mimic the dialogue aloud, paying attention to tone, speed, and natural rhythm. This method bridges the gap between textbook English and authentic conversational English. Another effective technique is listening for topic development and argumentation. When listening to news, debates, or discussions, try to identify the structure, the introduction, supporting evidence, examples, and conclusion. Summarize these aloud in your own words, noting how the speaker organizes thoughts. Recognizing structure helps you follow complex arguments and improves your ability to respond logically in English conversations or discussions. Shadowing remains a critical practice for advanced learners, but now you can take it further with interactive shadowing. Choose a podcast or lecture, listen to a short segment, and immediately repeat it aloud, not just copying words, but also intonation and emotion. Afterward, pause and ask yourself questions about the segment, then answer aloud. This combines listening, speaking, comprehension, and critical thinking into one exercise, reinforcing advanced skills. You can also practice paraphrasing and summarizing complex sentences. For example, if a speaker says, "Despite the challenges, the team managed to complete the project ahead of schedule," you might say. "Even with difficulties, they finished the project earlier than planned." Paraphrasing aloud strengthens comprehension, vocabulary, and flexibility in expressing ideas naturally. Advanced learners should also focus on multi-step comprehension exercises. Listen to a short story or news clip, identify the main idea, supporting points, unfamiliar vocabulary, and implied meaning, then summarize aloud. Afterward, predict possible outcomes or alternative scenarios in English. For example, if the story is about a company launching a new product, imagine potential problems or successes and explain them aloud. This technique integrates listening, critical thinking, and speaking skills. Another useful method is listening to complex sentence structures. Academic talks, debates, and professional interviews often include long sentences with multiple clauses. Practice by breaking sentences down into smaller parts, understanding each part, and then reconstructing them aloud in your own words. Over time, your brain adapts to following long, complex sentences in natural English, improving comprehension and fluency. For pronunciation, advanced learners should focus on stress patterns and rhythm. English words and sentences have natural stress on certain syllables, which affects comprehension. Listen to native speakers, mark stressed words, and repeat the sentences aloud, matching rhythm and intonation. This technique makes your English sound more natural and helps your ear distinguish important information when listening to fast speech. Another effective practice is listening to argumentative or opinion-based content. Focus on the speaker's position, reasons, and examples. After listening, express your opinion on the topic aloud, using new vocabulary or expressions you heard. For instance, if a speaker argues that remote work increases productivity, you might respond, "I partially agree because it saves commuting time, but I think teamwork may suffer without face-to-face interaction." This strengthens comprehension, vocabulary, and speaking fluency. Advanced learners can also practice active prediction. While listening to a podcast or lecture, pause before the speaker finishes a sentence and predict what will come next. For example, the government announced new regulations because might lead you to predict they want to reduce pollution or to improve safety standards. Even if your prediction isn't exactly correct, this exercise improves real-time comprehension and prepares your brain to anticipate English patterns naturally. You can combine listening with writing exercises for deeper engagement. Listen to a TED Talk or news clip, then write a brief summary or reflection in English. Afterward, read it aloud, focusing on pronunciation and natural sentence flow. This integrated approach strengthens comprehension, memory, vocabulary, and speaking fluency. Another advanced strategy is listening for connectors and discourse markers. Words like however, therefore, in addition, and on the other hand, help organize ideas. While listening, identify these connectors and then practice repeating sentences aloud, emphasizing them naturally. This improves comprehension and helps your speech sound more organized and fluent. Listening with visualization is another highly effective technique. When hearing a story or narrative, create mental images of events, settings, and characters. Then retell the story aloud using your visualization. This practice improves memory retention, comprehension, and fluency. It also helps connect abstract ideas to concrete images, which enhances understanding of complex English topics. Another important practice is listening to content with multiple speakers. Pay attention to how they take turns, interrupt politely, or add supporting points. Afterwards, summarize each speaker's argument or opinion aloud. This method strengthens your ability to follow real-life conversations, debates, and discussions, which are often faster and less structured than formal English. For vocabulary development, advanced learners should focus on collocations and word combinations. When listening, note phrases like take into account, bear in mind, or come up with. Create your own sentences using these phrases aloud. This reinforces vocabulary in context, making it easier to recognize and use naturally in conversations. Another useful method is listening with selective attention. Instead of trying to understand every single word, focus on keywords, main ideas, and supporting details. For instance, when listening to a lecture, identify the topic, main argument, and key evidence. This trains your brain to extract essential information and follow complex English, even if you miss minor words. Shadowing with variations is also highly effective. Listen to a short clip, repeat it aloud, and then try changing some words or expressions while keeping the meaning. For example, if the speaker says, "The experiment was successful due to careful planning," you could say, "The study succeeded because of thorough preparation." This exercise enhances comprehension, vocabulary flexibility, and natural expression. Advanced learners should also practice listening under real-life conditions. Listen to content with background noise, overlapping voices, or fast speech. For instance, watch interviews in crowded places or live podcasts. Initially, you may not catch every word, but repeated exposure trains your ear to focus on key information and interpret natural English effectively. Another effective method is listening with analysis of tone and intention. Pay attention to whether the speaker is serious, humorous, sarcastic, or persuasive. Pause and repeat sentences aloud, mimicking the tone. This improves both listening and speaking, as understanding subtle cues is essential for professional and social communication in English. You can also practice listening with real-life storytelling. Listen to a personal anecdote or narrative, then retell it aloud in your own words, including details, emotions, and sequences. Focus on clear pronunciation, natural rhythm, and connecting ideas logically. This builds comprehension, expressive ability, and fluency simultaneously. Advanced learners should also practice integrated listening exercises. For example, listen to a podcast, take notes in English, summarize aloud, write reflections, and discuss opinions. This holistic approach strengthens comprehension, vocabulary, pronunciation, and natural speech. Doing it daily creates a structured routine that accelerates advanced English mastery. Another excellent method is listening and reacting to different content types. Alternate between news, scientific talks, debates, and storytelling. Observe differences in vocabulary, sentence structure, and tone. Repeat challenging sentences aloud, focusing on fluency, intonation, and connected speech. This variety trains your brain to adapt to any English situation, from formal lectures to informal conversations. You should also practice listening for cultural context and implied meaning. For example, idioms, jokes, or casual expressions may not make sense literally. Pause, think about the situation, and explain aloud what the speaker means. This enhances comprehension and prepares you for understanding native speakers in social or professional settings. Another advanced technique is to use timed summarization drills. Listen to a 2-minute segment, then summarize it aloud in 1 minute, focusing on main ideas, key details, and vocabulary. Repeat with different content daily. This trains your brain to process English quickly and express it clearly under time constraints. Shadowing combined with note-taking is also effective. Listen to a segment, pause, take brief notes on main ideas and vocabulary, then repeat the segment aloud while referring to your notes. This method reinforces comprehension, memory, and speaking skills. Over time, you develop the ability to recall and convey information in English naturally and fluently. Finally, advanced learners should focus on daily reflection. After each listening session, ask questions like, "What did I learn? Which expressions were new? How can I use them?" Answer aloud in English. This reflection consolidates learning. One of the most powerful techniques for advanced learners is practicing listening with prediction and anticipation. When listening to podcasts, news segments, or lectures, pause briefly after a few words or sentences and predict what the speaker will say next. For example, if a speaker says, "The new policy aims to reduce," you might predict pollution or unemployment. Even if your guess is not entirely accurate, this exercise trains your brain to follow English in real time, improving comprehension and processing speed. Over time, you'll notice that you can anticipate ideas in conversations and lectures without consciously thinking about each word. Another effective method is practicing listening for emphasis and intonation patterns. English speakers often stress certain words or syllables to indicate importance, contrast, or emotion. For instance, in the sentence, "I never said she stole my money," stressing different words changes the meaning completely. Listen carefully to how native speakers use stress and intonation, then repeat sentences aloud, mimicking the emphasis and pitch. This not only improves listening comprehension, but also helps your spoken English sound natural and expressive. Advanced learners should also focus on shadowing while adding personal expression. Choose a podcast, TED Talk, or interview and repeat each sentence aloud immediately after the speaker. While doing this, add your own emotional tone to match the content. For example, if the speaker is describing an exciting event, express excitement in your voice. If it's a serious topic, maintain a solemn tone. This practice trains your ears to recognize emotion, rhythm, and natural speech patterns, while also improving your own expressive abilities in English. Another important technique is listening to and analyzing multi-speaker interactions. Conversations with two or more people, such as debates, talk shows, or panel discussions, contain complex turn-taking, interruptions, and overlapping speech. Pay attention to who speaks when, how opinions are expressed, and how speakers agree or disagree. After listening, summarize each person's main points aloud in your own words. This improves comprehension of authentic conversational English and prepares you to engage in discussions with multiple participants. Confidently, advanced learners can also practice listening with contextual guessing. When encountering unfamiliar words or phrases in a podcast or lecture, avoid immediately checking a dictionary. Instead, try to infer the meaning from context. For example, if you hear, "The company decided to streamline operations to increase efficiency," even if streamline is new, you might guess it means simplify or improve workflow. Then, use the word in a sentence aloud to reinforce understanding. Contextual guessing builds strong vocabulary retention and comprehension skills. Another highly effective strategy is integrating listening with summarization and reflection. After listening to a short lecture or podcast, take a moment to summarize it aloud in your own words, then reflect on your personal opinion or analysis. For instance, after a talk about climate change, you might say, "The speaker emphasized the importance of renewable energy. I think that investing in solar and wind power is essential because it reduces pollution and creates jobs." This exercise combines comprehension, critical thinking, and spoken expression. Advanced learners should also incorporate listening with note-taking. While listening to a podcast, lecture, or discussion, jot down key points, new vocabulary, and ideas. Afterward, use your notes to summarize the content aloud in complete sentences. Over time, this practice enhances your ability to process information quickly and recall details accurately, which is crucial for academic, professional, and social settings in English. Another useful technique is timed listening exercises. Set a timer for 5 to 10 minutes and listen to a segment without pausing. Try to capture the main ideas, supporting points, and any examples given. After the timer ends, summarize what you heard aloud in English. This exercise simulates real-life situations, such as following a lecture or meeting, where you have to understand English in real time without stopping. Repeating timed exercises improves both comprehension and cognitive processing speed. You can also practice listening with paraphrasing. After listening to a short audio segment, repeat what you heard aloud using your own words and sentence structures. For example, if the speaker says, "The City Council is planning to implement stricter traffic regulations," you might say, "The local government wants to introduce tighter rules for traffic." Paraphrasing strengthens comprehension, vocabulary recall, and speaking flexibility. Advanced learners should also focus on listening for discourse markers and logical connectors. Words and phrases like however, therefore, as a result, and on the other hand, help organize ideas and signal relationships between points. While listening, identify these connectors, then repeat sentences aloud, emphasizing the connectors naturally. This improves comprehension of complex arguments and helps your own speech sound cohesive and logical. Another effective strategy is listening to a variety of accents and dialects. English is spoken around the world with different pronunciations, intonation patterns, and vocabulary. Expose yourself to American, British, Australian, Indian, and other accents through podcasts, interviews, and news segments. Repeat challenging sentences aloud to mimic the accent and rhythm. This improves listening flexibility, prepares you for international communication, and strengthens pronunciation skills. Advanced learners can also benefit from listening with active questioning. While listening to a lecture, discussion, or story, pause periodically and ask yourself questions like, what is the main idea? What examples were given? What is the speaker's opinion? Then answer aloud in English. This active engagement forces your brain to process English deeply, reinforcing comprehension and speaking fluency. Another powerful method is combining listening with storytelling practice. After listening to a narrative, retell the story aloud in your own words, including details, sequence of events, and emotions. Focus on clear pronunciation, logical flow, and natural intonation. This practice enhances comprehension, speaking fluency, and the ability to convey ideas engagingly in English. Advanced learners should also practice listening with emotional and tonal analysis. Pay attention to the speaker's emotion, whether it's excitement, frustration, humor, or sarcasm. Pause and repeat sentences aloud, mimicking both the words and the emotion. Understanding subtle cues is essential for real-life conversation and professional communication, where tone can completely change the meaning of a sentence. You can also practice listening with prediction and scenario imagining. After hearing part of a story, discussion, or lecture, pause and predict what might happen next. For example, if the speaker says, "The company faced several challenges during the project," you might predict, "They likely had delays or budget problems." Then, listen to check your prediction. This practice sharpens comprehension, attention, and critical thinking in English. Another effective technique is integrating listening with vocabulary reinforcement. While listening, note new words and phrases, then immediately use them in sentences aloud. For instance, if you hear meticulous in a podcast, you might say, "She is meticulous about her work," checking every detail carefully. Using new vocabulary actively strengthens memory, comprehension, and speaking skills. Advanced learners should also focus on listening under real-life conditions, including background noise or overlapping speech. Listen to interviews in crowded environments or live discussions online. Even if you miss some words, focus on main ideas, tone, and supporting details. Repeated exposure to realistic conditions improves comprehension and adaptability in authentic English situations. Another method is listening for cultural references and implied meaning. Native speakers often use expressions, jokes, or allusions that depend on cultural knowledge. Pause, consider the context, and explain aloud what the speaker means. This enhances comprehension, cultural understanding, and conversational confidence in English. Advanced learners can also practice listening with integrated writing and speaking. After a podcast or lecture, write a summary or reflection in English, then read it aloud, focusing on pronunciation, intonation, and flow. This combined practice strengthens comprehension, expressive ability, and memory retention. Another effective technique is shadowing with variation. After listening to a short segment, repeat it aloud, then try changing some words while keeping the meaning. For example, the meeting was postponed due to unforeseen circumstances could become, the discussion was delayed because of unexpected issues. This enhances comprehension, flexibility, and natural expression in English. You can also practice listening for inference and deduction. Sometimes speakers imply information rather than stating it directly. Pay attention to context, tone, and word choice. For example, if someone says, "I'm not sure that's the best idea," they may be expressing disagreement politely. Pause, analyze, and repeat aloud with appropriate emphasis and intonation. Understanding implied meaning is crucial for advanced listening and real-life communication. Another method is timed summarization under pressure. Listen to a short segment, then summarize aloud in 1 minute, including main points, key details, and vocabulary. This trains your brain to process English quickly and communicate efficiently, which is valuable in academic, professional, or social contexts. Advanced learners should also practice listening with integration of multiple skills. For instance, listen to a podcast, take notes, summarize aloud, write reflections, shadow sentences with proper intonation, and answer self-posed questions. This holistic approach reinforces comprehension, vocabulary, pronunciation, and natural English expression simultaneously. Another powerful technique is listening with analytical thinking. After hearing a lecture, debate, or discussion, pause and critically analyze the arguments. Identify strengths, weaknesses, and supporting evidence. Then, explain your analysis aloud in English, using clear sentence structures and advanced vocabulary. This method develops critical thinking, advanced comprehension, and expressive fluency. You should also practice listening with varying content types, such as news, storytelling, debates, lectures, and interviews. Each type has different vocabulary, sentence structure, and tone. Alternate between them and repeat challenging sentences aloud to improve adaptability, comprehension, and expressive skills. Another advanced technique is listening while predicting vocabulary usage. While following a lecture or podcast, anticipate which words or phrases the speaker might use next. For example, in a talk about the environment, expect words like sustainability, pollution, or renewable energy. This trains your brain to follow complex English naturally and enhances comprehension speed. Finally, advanced learners should practice reflection and consolidation after each listening session. Ask questions like, "What did I learn? Which words or expressions were new? How can I use them?" Then answer aloud in full sentences. This reflective practice reinforces vocabulary, comprehension, and speaking confidence. One of the most effective strategies for advanced learners is practicing real-time conversation simulation. Imagine you are participating in a live discussion, interview, or debate. Listen to a podcast or video clip, then pause and respond aloud as if you were part of the conversation. For example, if the speaker says, "What do you think about remote work?" Respond with your opinion in full sentences using supporting reasons. This technique improves comprehension, fluency, and the ability to express your thoughts naturally under pressure, which is crucial for real-life conversations. Another highly effective method is listening to complex narrative structures. Many podcasts, audiobooks, and interviews use stories with multiple characters, flashbacks, and parallel events. While listening, try to track each character's actions, motivations, and relationships. Afterward, summarize the story aloud in your own words, noting the sequence and cause and effect relationships. This helps you develop advanced comprehension skills and improves your ability to follow and discuss intricate content in English. Advanced learners should also focus on practicing listening with idiomatic and phrasal verb comprehension. Many expressions such as look up to, get along with, or hit the nail on the head cannot be understood literally. While listening to native speakers, identify phrasal verbs and idioms, pause to consider the meaning and context, and then repeat the sentence aloud. Additionally, create your own sentences using these expressions. This method improves vocabulary retention, comprehension, and expressive fluency. Another key technique is active note-taking while listening. Choose a 5 to 10 minute segment from a podcast, TED Talk, or news report. Write down main ideas, supporting points, unfamiliar vocabulary, and expressions. Afterward, review your notes and summarize the content aloud in English. By combining listening, writing, and speaking, you reinforce comprehension, vocabulary, and expression. Over time, this integrated practice builds advanced English fluency and critical thinking. Advanced learners can also benefit from listening with tonal analysis. Pay attention not only to words but also to intonation, stress, and rhythm. For instance, notice when a speaker emphasizes certain words to show contrast, surprise, or agreement. Pause and repeat sentences aloud, mimicking the tonal patterns. Understanding tonal cues helps you detect meaning beyond the literal words and enables more natural communication in real-life situations. Another effective method is listening to debates and argument-based content. Focus on identifying the speaker's position, supporting evidence, and counter-arguments. For instance, during a debate on climate change, note each participant's opinion and the reasons they provide. Then explain each viewpoint aloud and state your own opinion. This technique improves comprehension of complex arguments, vocabulary usage, and critical thinking while strengthening speaking fluency. You can also practice shadowing with incremental complexity. Start with short sentences, repeat them aloud, then gradually move to longer, more complex sentences or paragraphs. Focus on rhythm, linking words, and natural pronunciation. This helps internalize advanced sentence structures and prepares you for listening to lectures, discussions, or fast conversational English. Advanced learners should also practice listening for implied meaning and nuance. Native speakers often imply more than they say explicitly. For example, "I'm not sure that's the best idea" might imply polite disagreement rather than uncertainty. Pause, analyze the meaning, and repeat the sentence aloud using appropriate tone and emphasis. Recognizing implied meaning is essential for understanding professional, social, and cultural subtleties in English. Another highly effective method is listening with multi-step comprehension exercises. For example, listen to a story or lecture. Identify the main idea, supporting details, unfamiliar vocabulary, and the speaker's attitude. Then summarize aloud and predict possible outcomes or consequences. For instance, if the topic is a new government policy, imagine potential benefits or challenges and explain your thoughts in English. This technique integrates comprehension, critical thinking, and expressive ability. You can also practice listening with selective focus. Rather than trying to catch every word, focus on key phrases, main points, and transitional words. For example, notice words like therefore, however, and on the other hand. This trains your brain to prioritize essential information, which is crucial for following fast, authentic English. After listening, summarize what you understood aloud, emphasizing key points. Advanced learners should incorporate listening with paraphrasing. After hearing a sentence or paragraph, repeat it aloud using your own words. For example, the researchers concluded that regular exercise improves mental health could become, they found that working out regularly helps people feel mentally healthier. Paraphrasing strengthens comprehension, vocabulary retention, and speaking flexibility. Another effective method is listening with contextual prediction. Pause during a lecture or discussion and anticipate what the speaker might say next, based on context, topic, and prior statements. Even if your prediction isn't perfect, this practice trains your brain to follow natural English flow in real time and improves overall comprehension. You can also combine listening with vocabulary expansion. Identify new words or phrases in a podcast, note their meaning, and immediately create sentences aloud using them. For example, if you hear meticulous, say, "She is meticulous when organizing her files," checking every detail carefully. Using new vocabulary actively strengthens memory, comprehension, and expressive skills. Advanced learners should practice listening under authentic conditions, including background noise or overlapping speakers. For instance, watch live interviews, panel discussions, or podcasts recorded in noisy environments. Focus on main ideas and speaker intent, even if some words are unclear. Repeated exposure to realistic conditions enhances listening comprehension and adaptability in everyday English. Another strategy is listening with cultural and social awareness. Many expressions, jokes, or references depend on cultural context. Pause, analyze, and explain aloud what the speaker means. For instance, if someone says, "He's a dark horse in the competition," understand that it refers to someone unexpectedly strong rather than a literal horse. This enhances comprehension, cultural understanding, and conversational confidence. Advanced learners can also use listening with reflective speaking exercises. After each session, summarize what you heard, identify key vocabulary, and discuss your thoughts, predictions, or opinions aloud. For example, after listening to a TED Talk on education, explain which ideas you agree or disagree with and why. This builds comprehension, critical thinking, and expressive fluency simultaneously. Another effective technique is shadowing with emotional context. Pay attention to the speaker's emotional tone, whether it's excitement, frustration, or sarcasm. Repeat sentences aloud, matching both words and emotion. Understanding emotional cues helps you interpret meaning more accurately and improves expressive skills for social, professional, and academic English. You can also practice listening with synthesis exercises. Listen to multiple sources on the same topic, such as news reports or podcasts, then summarize the combined ideas aloud in English. For instance, if several experts discuss climate change, synthesize their opinions and examples into a cohesive summary. This method improves comprehension, critical thinking, and advanced expression. Advanced learners should also practice listening for detail and nuance. Pay attention to adjectives, adverbs, examples, and supporting information that clarify meaning. Repeat sentences aloud with proper stress and intonation to internalize subtle differences in meaning. This sharpens listening accuracy and speaking precision. Another useful method is listening with multi-layered analysis. After hearing a segment, identify the main idea, supporting points, tone, implied meaning, and vocabulary usage. Then, summarize aloud, integrating all these layers. This technique strengthens comprehension, critical thinking, and expressive ability at an advanced level. You can also practice listening with summarization under time constraints. Listen to a short segment, then summarize it aloud in 1 minute, including main ideas, key details, and any expressions or idioms. This simulates real-life scenarios where you need to process and communicate information quickly. Advanced learners should also focus on listening with active discussion simulation. After listening to a podcast or lecture, imagine engaging in a conversation with the speaker or audience. Pose questions and answer them aloud, using new vocabulary and idiomatic expressions. This enhances comprehension, speaking fluency, and confidence in real-life conversations. Another highly effective technique is integrating listening with shadowing and writing. Listen to a short segment, repeat it aloud with natural intonation, then write a summary in English. Finally, read your summary aloud. This multi-skill approach strengthens comprehension, memory, vocabulary, pronunciation, and expressive ability. Advanced learners can practice listening with inference and deduction. Pay attention to what is implied rather than explicitly stated. For example, if someone says, "I'm not sure that's the best approach," they may imply disagreement. Analyze, interpret, and repeat aloud using proper tone. Understanding implied meaning is essential for advanced English comprehension and real-life communication. You can also practice listening with thematic immersion. Pick a topic such as technology, politics, or culture, and listen to multiple sources on it daily. Focus on vocabulary, sentence structure, connectors, and idioms. Summarize and discuss ideas aloud. Immersion strengthens comprehension, vocabulary, and fluency, especially for advanced learners. Another method is listening with predictive summarization. Pause during a segment and anticipate what the speaker will say next, then summarize aloud. For example, in a discussion about education reform, predict solutions or challenges and express them in English. This technique enhances real-time comprehension, critical thinking, and expressive fluency. Advanced learners should practice listening with integrated reflection. After a session, ask, "What did I understand? Which expressions were new? How can I use them?" Answer aloud, forming complete sentences. This consolidates comprehension, vocabulary, and speaking confidence. Finally, one of the most powerful strategies is creating a daily advanced listening routine that combines multiple techniques. Listen to a podcast, TED Talk, or news segment. Take detailed notes in English, highlighting new vocabulary, idioms, and discourse markers. Summarize aloud using your own words and expressions. Shadow challenging sentences with proper intonation, stress, and emotion. Predict ideas or outcomes and explain them aloud. Reflect on the content and form personal opinions in English. Practicing this routine consistently develops advanced listening skills, speaking fluency, vocabulary, critical thinking, and confidence. It transforms English from something you study into something you think, feel, and express naturally every day. One very effective method for advanced learners is practicing listening with professional context simulation. For example, if you want to improve English for business or academic purposes, listen to interviews, webinars, or panel discussions in your field. Pay attention to the vocabulary, expressions, and formal structures used. After listening, summarize the content aloud, then give your own opinion or suggest solutions related to the topic. This strengthens comprehension, domain-specific vocabulary, critical thinking, and professional expression in English. Another highly useful technique is listening to fast, natural speech and gradually building understanding. Native speakers often speak quickly, compress words, or use contractions. Choose a short podcast or interview and first listen at normal speed to get the general idea. Next, slow it down and listen carefully for each word and intonation. Then speed it up and shadow aloud, repeating the content naturally. This builds auditory processing skills, allowing you to follow authentic English at natural speed without struggling. Advanced learners should also practice listening with dialogue reconstruction. Listen to a conversation, pause at intervals, and try to reconstruct the dialogue aloud, maintaining natural rhythm, tone, and turn-taking. Include gestures or pauses as if you were part of the conversation. This practice improves comprehension, conversational timing, speaking fluency, and confidence in real-life English interactions. Another effective technique is focused listening for argument and reasoning patterns. When listening to debates, academic talks, or persuasive speeches, identify the speaker's claims, supporting evidence, examples, and conclusions. Then summarize these points aloud and discuss your own stance on the argument. For example, if a speaker claims that urban planning affects mental health, note their examples and reasoning, then add your own perspective. This method develops comprehension, critical thinking, and structured expression in English. You can also practice listening with vocabulary expansion using thematic clusters. Instead of learning single words, focus on groups of related vocabulary from a podcast, article, or lecture. For instance, if the topic is climate change, note words like sustainable, renewable, carbon footprint, and emissions. Repeat sentences aloud using these words in context and create new sentences of your own. This strengthens both listening comprehension and active usage of advanced vocabulary. Advanced learners should also focus on idiomatic nuance and colloquial expressions. Native speakers often use idioms, phrasal verbs, and figurative language that can be confusing if interpreted literally. While listening, pause at unfamiliar expressions, infer meaning from context, and then repeat the sentence aloud, using the expression in a new example. For instance, if someone says he's skating on thin ice, you might repeat, "He's taking a big risk with that decision." This practice develops natural comprehension and expressive ability. Another powerful strategy is listening with predictive inference. During lectures, stories, or discussions, pause after a few sentences and predict what might come next. For example, if a speaker says, "Due to the recent changes in policy," you might predict, "Businesses will have to adjust their strategies." Afterward, continue listening to check your prediction. This strengthens anticipation skills, comprehension, and real-time processing. You can also practice listening with synthesis exercises. After listening to multiple sources on the same topic, such as podcasts, news clips, or interviews, summarize the combined information aloud in your own words. For instance, if 3 podcasts discuss renewable energy, synthesize their points, benefits, challenges, and solutions. This advanced practice improves comprehension, analytical thinking, vocabulary, and fluent expression. Advanced learners should also practice listening with tone and intention analysis. Focus on how speakers express opinions, convey sarcasm, or emphasize certain points. Repeat sentences aloud, mimicking tone, stress, and emotion. Understanding subtle nuances helps in social and professional contexts and enhances your ability to respond naturally and appropriately. Another effective method is listening, with complex sentence reconstruction. When encountering long sentences with multiple clauses, pause and analyze their structure, main clause, subordinate clauses, and connectors. Then reconstruct the sentence aloud in your own words while maintaining the original meaning. For example, although the project faced significant challenges, the team managed to complete it ahead of schedule due to careful planning could be paraphrased as, despite facing many difficulties, the team finished the project early because they planned thoroughly. This improves comprehension, grammar mastery, and speaking flexibility. You can also practice listening with multi-step discussion exercises. Listen to a segment then. 1. Summarize the main idea aloud. 2. Identify supporting details. 3. Note new vocabulary or idioms. 4. Express your opinion or prediction. This integrated approach strengthens listening, critical thinking, and expressive skills simultaneously, which is vital for advanced English fluency. Advanced learners should also incorporate listening with real-life simulation. For example, play a podcast segment in a noisy environment, such as a cafe or street sounds, then repeat what you heard aloud. Focus on key ideas, tone, and emotion rather than every word. This mimics real-life English encounters and trains your ear to extract essential information accurately.